Hello, everyone, and welcome to UGA Sports Rumors versus Facts, where we talk all things Georgia football recruiting here with the UGA Sports recruiting staff. It's myself and Jed May here, and Trent Smallwood will be with us here shortly. Jed, recruiting never stops, and it was another busy weekend with some high-profile guys. We're going to talk about James Smith. We're going to talk about Julian Sayin. We're going to talk about guys committed elsewhere that showed up. But first of all, man, how was your weekend? And just kind of fill anybody in on some little tidbits that we're going to talk about here to start off with.
Yeah, going good. We had some guys, Georgia had some guys into town this weekend. Like you said, some guys, some really intriguing names and intriguing positions. We had a few guys get some offers this weekend. Some of them have been coming for a while. And it's like you said, recruiting never stops. And it's, 6 months or whatever till 5 months till the season kicks off. But we're right in the thick of it in the recruiting world right now.
Yeah, I know that this weekend may not be as big. A lot of golfers on that Georgia football staff. So with it being Masters weekend, I don't think you'll see as busy of a weekend there in Athens this weekend. But they'll be gearing up for G Day. I know there's already been some guys reaching out to me saying they could end up popping in on G Day. So we'll be talking about some of those visitors and things along those lines, but. James Smith was one of the bigger visitors. He was formerly of IMG Academy. Now he's at Carver High School in Montgomery. He trains with Madhouse Training, 4-star defensive lineman that is got potential to be a 5-star before the class is over with. As Trent joins us, Trent, how you doing, man?
Good. What's going on?
Talking a little James Smith here as we get rolling, and we got some of these big name guys that have joined in. But Trent, I was just saying that James Smith right now is a guy that he's north of that 310 that he's listed at. He's probably 6'4", between more so between 325 and 335, but moves like he's a guy that's 295. I mean, he's very quick, very versatile. So we're going to be talking a little bit about him. He came for another visit, and he's got to talk to Kirby Smart and Chuck. I almost said Chuck Schumer. We're not talking politics here. So Chuck Schumann over there, the co-defensive coordinator. So he's talked to them a lot. He's talked to Trey Scott a lot. But now he got to see Trey Scott coach up in person right there. Good to run the guys through the drills. You've been around doing this a long time. What is that? What's kind of the takeaway you get from guys when they see Georgia practice for the first time?
I think it's a big plus because you get to know a coach as a person, just, as what they are off the field, but it's important to get to know how they're going to coach you on the field. I mean, they can tell you a lot of stuff when they're sitting in a film room or all that stuff, but to actually see them in action is big because, I mean, that could be you the following year going through those drills under him. So just kind of see how those kids are being coached and, just seeing, his philosophy on the field and stuff like that. It's big.
Yeah, and James is a guy that he is laser focused. He's a hard guy to get a hold of. I'll tell you that. I actually had a conversation with James this morning at 6:07 Central Time. So that young man is handling the recruitment around the clock. So that was very interesting getting a call that early in the morning back. But James is a young man that is laser focused. Like I said, he went to IMG, and Jed, a lot of times when those guys go to IMG, now he's back at Carver now, but when you go to IMG, you're really investing in the future, so to speak. These are guys who are very long-term oriented when they go to get that experience at IMG Academy.
Exactly. And you look at the success Georgia's had getting guys out of there in recent years. I mean, just this past class, Barry Alexander was there, Dalen Everett was there. Nolan Smith was down there for a while. I mean, Georgia has Xavier Smori and Smile Mondon, I believe, were both there, if I'm not mistaken. So Georgia has recruited whatever it is. And it's funny because, like you mentioned, Blaine, it's not like it's just a high school. They get guys from all over the country. So for whatever reason, Georgia's recruited IMG really well. And with James Smith and some of these other guys in the 23 class, they're looking to keep that going.
Yeah, and then, like I said, he's back at Carver now, but he went there for a year and trained hard and learned kind of that work ethic there underneath the IMG guys, and now he's back with his teammate Quay Russaw, who was supposed to visit Georgia, couldn't get the logistics of that lined up, so he ended up staying close to home. Did a Auburn visit. He's going to hit Georgia either later on in April or in May. Over there, he tells me. But James Smith is a guy who Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State. I mean, he's wide open right now, but those three are really hard after him, really recruiting him the hardest. I would venture to say at this certain point. And Georgia's looking for those guys that can dominate up front, especially with as much as they're losing in this draft class, and you got to reload. And even though it's a year separation, they would love to have James Smith on board. And Jed, we also had a 5-star quarterback in the class of 2024 in town. You talked to Julian Sayin. What was the latest out of Sayin, the 5-star 2024 gunslinger?
I'm going to start with this. The next person that makes a Sayin pun on our message board is getting banned. I don't have the power to do that, but I'm going to make it happen. But yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys that I think on our rankings we have a pro style and dual threat. I think pro style, there's like a pro style modern, right? There's the guys that like to throw from the pocket, but with how quarterbacks are nowadays, guys need to be able to make plays with their feet, even if it's just extending plays. And I think Julian Sayin fits that mold. He spent a lot of time with Todd Monken Friday and Saturday, watch the scrimmage, all that kind of stuff. He really likes the pro style offense at Georgia. And you look at the schools that are really standing out to him is Georgia, Texas, Michigan, and Notre Dame. Those are all schools that run more of the traditional pro style offenses, not like the Oklahomas or the schools like that. So it was a great visit. Georgia, he came out here for a game. He got offered last summer, and this visit really sort of cemented Georgia's place in that top echelon right now.
Yeah, and Trent, I mean, I think that's a common deal when guys see Todd Monken's offense. They see, you hear all the negative recruiting, I think, when they come around saying, oh, well, Georgia's just handing the ball off, a lot of running back stuff. But then they get to see the offense up close and personal, and especially with Sayin being in town for that visit during that scrimmage, it seemed like Georgia aired it out a lot from reports that we heard. So I think that there's definitely kind of some misinformation out there, because Georgia, when you look at it, they're as balanced as they come. I think Brent was telling us the other day, Brent Rollins was telling us when it's non-garbage time, Georgia's as balanced as anybody in the country. I mean, what are your thoughts on these quarterbacks that come and maybe have one perception of Georgia leading in and then come away with different opinions?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the negative recruitment around Georgia still, and it goes back to, I guess, 2017, that year where they probably did run it 60-70% of the time and were effective running it. They had all the tools. That was the way their offense was kind of built up, and you saw what they did to Oklahoma and the Rose Bowl and stuff like that. But they've kind of got that, I guess, reputation of being an all-run team, and that's not necessarily what they've been under Monken. I mean, it's basically a 50-50 run pass, and a lot of that is you said about garbage time. Georgia's going to get, they're going to go back and look at the stats. They're going to say, well, they rushed it 45 times and they only threw it 30. But in the fourth quarter, they didn't throw a pass and they had 18 rushes. So I think a lot of that is what Georgia had to do in 2021 when they were beating the brakes off everybody in the fourth quarter. But I think when you come and you listen to Todd talk and listen to what he's wanting to do, I mean, you saw what the offense was kind of like, when Bennett wasn't the quarterback, and you saw more pass than it was run. Now, then he brought a run style quarterback in there. Now it kind of evened out with RPO stuff and stuff like that. So I think what he wants is a guy who can, pro style, whatever he looks at, but he wants that can be a threat in the running game. And it just opens up the running game and it opens up the RPOs. And I think the whole Georgia's just a running team is that's kind of like one of those 1980 jokes. No, it's not not really. It's not really what Georgia is. So
Yeah, I agree, and we're having more questions on the quarterback situation when we get to our vault questions here. But you can see with this film we got up with Julian Sayin, who's a 2024 5-star quarterback out of Carlsbad, California. Really can deliver the ball, great accuracy down the field, navigates the pocket, pushes up in the pocket. That's something a lot of high school guys they try to escape out the back and create bad habits, but being able to navigate, trust the pocket, move up in it, and deliver the ball in time and in tight windows. That's something that is good to see out of any kind of high school quarterback that you're recruiting. And Georgia has put, and you can see right here, Sayin can move, get out of the pocket when he needs to. But any 2024 quarterback, any other quarterback, you're looking for those fundamentals, right? The being able to have good footwork, the being able to read defenses, which these guys are able to do earlier and earlier through all these training that they do from 10 years old on up. I mean, they're out there with these quarterback coaches and things like that. And Julian Sayin is one of the guys in the 2024 class, Jed, that I would say when you add in Dylan Raiola and Davis. Braden Davis. When you add in those two, then those are two of the ones that they're most invested in. I think Julian Sayin would be thrown right into that mix of the 2024 guys.
Jaden Davis.
Davis, not Braden Davis. My bad. Yeah, Jaden Davis. I lost his first name there.
There's Jaden Bradford too out of IMG. There's CJ Carr out of Michigan. But yeah, you look at the top echelon of those quarterbacks. I definitely think it's Raiola, maybe Raiola 1A and Sayin 1B in that group, and maybe Sayin, or I can't even talk now.
Jaden Davis.
Right. Yeah, I think those three are all really right there together at the top. But obviously, there's going to be a lot in that class is going to ride on what ends up happening with Arch Manning, obviously, in this 23 class.
Well, that's what I was going to say. We're really going to see what happens with that 2024 quarterback spot when we figure out what goes on with Arch Manning, right? Because somebody's either going to have to say, hey, I'm not afraid to go in there and compete with a name like an Arch Manning, or what happens if Georgia misses on Arch Manning? Do they even elect to go after a quarterback in the class of 2023, or do they say, hey, we'll take what comes, maybe utilize the portal if we need to, and then really go all in on a guy like a Dylan Raiola, or go all in on a Sayin, that kind of deal, to make sure the quarterback in the future is, because you do have guys there, Vandergriff, Beck, Stockton, that obviously Georgia feels good about, or they wouldn't be on the roster. So even though Stetson Bennett's probably going to end up being the starter again, in my opinion, they feel good about those guys. Now the question is, do one of those guys leave? But Trent, you got something to add to that?
Yeah, I think the ideal situation would be able to land, an Arch Manning in 23, not have to go after a big name in 24, and then you got Antoine Hill in 25. I think that would be the ideal situation. Get some class separation, and that would really help things there.
Yeah, Antoine Hill and Colin Hurley in April and in May. He's a 2025 quarterback out of Trinity Christian there in Jackson. He's visited multiple times last year in both August and in October. So, this is a thing where Georgia's planning out several years in advance at this quarterback position and got their fingers in a lot of these recruitments. So definitely something to keep your eye on there. And then something I thought was interesting, guys, and we can also talk about any other takeaways from the weekend, was I hadn't heard much about Anthony Evans out of Converse, Texas, before he showed up this weekend for a visit at Georgia and ends up walking away with an offer. This is a young man who has a verified 4.36 laser timed 40, ran the 100-meter this couple weeks ago for the first time since he was a 9th grader, and ran a 10.6, which is, that's picking him up and putting him down. And Brian McClendon and Todd Monken got in touch with him. He trains with Quincy Carter out in Texas, and Quincy Carter was just happened to be there this weekend. Well, Evans for the scrimmage, Evans was there as well. So Quincy Carter already he's recruiting for his old former teammate Kirby Smart. He's over there recruiting for the Dogs. So it's very very interesting to see Quincy kind of be back around and be involved. But one of his trainees and a guy who Anthony Evans is a Arkansas commit, like I said, and walked away with that Georgia offer. His mom is a native of Savannah, Georgia. The young man actually told me that his mom was like dancing in Todd Monken's office after he got the offer. So, hey, she's excited about him, but getting that offer from the Georgia Bulldogs. But that kind of speed, Trent, I mean, that seems to be the common denominator with Brian McClendon and the guys he's going after.
Definitely. I mean, and coming from an offense like Oregon, yes, that's what you're recruiting. You're recruiting all speed because that's what you want in that type of offense. But that's one of the things that you can't really, I guess, coach is speed. I mean, you got guys like Arian Smith. I mean, if he could stay healthy, he'd probably be Georgia's leading receiver, just the way he can, go deep. And then you got CJ Smith coming in, who I guess he's there. Is he there? He is.
Yeah, he's there, and that's another thing is this Anthony Evans. He plans on running track in college, and that's something that's not foreign to Georgia. With Miko Hardman having done it, Arian Smith does it, and then CJ Smith is going to do it for Georgia as well. So the track guys, it seems to be a comfortable environment for wide receivers / track guys to come to UGA.
Yeah, and football wise, you need one or two of those guys to work out. I mean, you can recruit 4 or 5 of them, but you need one or two of them to work out. Then you got your, I guess, like Alabama, Devontae Smith and those guys like that. So, yeah, I mean that you just keep recruiting that speed, and then you're gonna hit on a few of them where they're not just track guys; they're football players too.
I can't remember. Did Isaiah McKenzie run track when he was at Georgia? Did he end up doing any track while he was there? I know he's still playing. So
yeah.
So the wide receiver, people don't think of wide receivers at Georgia and things like that in terms of, I know obviously George Pickens has a chance, but when you go back and look at it, there's a lot of guys who have been in the league. They've had success in the league. Miko, Isaiah McKenzie, guys like that are making names for themselves. So, and that's one thing that Anthony Evans pointed out. He said not only is his mom from Georgia, not only is Quincy Carter his trainer, but he looks at the success that Georgia's had and the success in having guys that are multiple sport athletes like that. So something to keep an eye on there with Anthony Evans.
Miko's role just got a lot bigger too. So
ain't no doubt with Tyke having jumped ship to Miami. So, and Trent, last thing before we go to questions. You went to a showcase this weekend, right? Anything stand out from the showcase? And I know there's some younger guys over there, but anything stand out that people may need to know about on the showcase?
No, I mean, nothing really Georgia related. There was just a bunch of guys that, 25 kids that, you look them up and they don't have no Rivals profile, and just some kids to monitor, just, going into this fall. There's a couple kids out there that ran 4.4 40s, and they were actually tying them out there, and a couple good looking kids. But these are the type of camps, I guess, that you go to and you're not really expecting to talk to anybody about Georgia, really, but you're kind of looking for that for those kids that are like, golly, he's been overlooked, with this COVID situation and all this stuff, and so there was a couple kids that stood out. I'm gonna post some notes on the vault. I have some notes listed out, but there's a couple 25 kids that look really good that don't have Rivals profiles. That I told them I'm gonna get them a Rivals profile and something to look forward to.
Absolutely. So we will have those coming forward. It's on the that's another reason to be on the vault. You hear about some of these young guys early on in recruitment before they blow up. So if you are watching right now on YouTube, go ahead and put in comments, questions, anything you want us to talk about here on Georgia football recruiting. We will absolutely do so. So we'll be happy to answer those comments and questions. So go ahead and drop them in, and we'll do so. We're going to start, Jed, though, with our friend Scuffletown Dog from the Vault. He came loaded for bear, man. A lot of questions and not just recruiting as well. So go ahead and read off what Scuffletown had to say.
Yeah, Senior Scuff. Starting off, does Stetson start? Who is the number 2 quarterback now? And then on the recruiting front, could this be Kirby's best class in 2023? And then Deuce Robinson, tight end, was there this weekend. Any news on his visit?
So we'll start off with the first one. Does Stetson start? I think quite simply the answer is yes. I think that it's just not that there's not going to be competition, but it's just hard for me to fathom that Stetson would be the guy that they put all that trust in and kind of sweat equity in, so to speak, throughout the national championship run, unless he just totally self-destructs and does stuff that is even more, risky and puts himself in trouble in terms of decision making. That would be the thing right there. Trent, who, in your estimation, who would you say is the number 2 guy right now?
I mean, I don't really know because I think they're giving Beck and Vandegrift, and I guess Stockton too, the equal reps this spring, and you kind of want to see what you have in those guys. You've had 2 other quarterbacks on campus, and you've had what you're getting. With what you have now, basically what you so you want to see what you have in Vandegrift. You want to see what you have in Beck. I think Stetson's going to be the quarterback, but you have to have a number 2 guy. Last year, it was important to have a number 2 guy. Who is that number 2 guy? I think probably Carson Beck has the leg up, but I think Vandegrift, Beck had the leg up last year as well and wasn't able to to do it. So. I think spring will play a big role in them working with number 1s. I think it's just the thing where they know what they got with Stetson. Who's the better quarterback? Who's going to be able to replace Stetson if Stetson gets hurt? And I think that guy could be Brock, but that's I guess we'll wait and see after spring and see where everything is on the pecking order.
Well, tying it into recruiting, right? I think that what you have to look for is everybody may be saying, singing Kumbaya and saying everything's great right now. But if one of those guys, in my opinion, if one of those guys doesn't get over that hump and make that push and make that move to number 1 with spring, G Day comes and goes, one of them is going to look at moving in the portal. I mean, that's just the nature of it. I just don't see them all 3. If they all 3 sit there and they're content to wait another year, then guess what? They're more high character guys than most out there and more patient than most out there in the college football world today. But that's just not how it is today. And who would blame the guys if they did? Because there's only one quarterback on the field, and you go to college as a high profile, recruit to play. I mean, you go there to play, and if that opportunity is not there, then they may go somewhere else. But
especially a guy like Carson Beck. I mean, this is a guy going into his 3rd year. Vandegrift's going into his 2nd year. Stockton's going in his 1st. A little different with those guys because I guess one of them's a true freshman, one of them's a redshirt freshman. But you're looking at Carson Beck going to his 3rd year, maybe not playing until after his 3rd year if he gets on the field. So I think if he falls below Vandegrift on the depth chart, or if he's told that Vandegrift's going to be the backup quarterback, I think you'll see Carson Beck move on because his time's running out.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it would be the 4th year on campus before we get to play if something unforeseen happens. Now, nobody thought that anything can happen in football. Nobody thought Jake Fromm was going to play that year either when Jacob Eason went down to the Appalachian State game. So you never know what's going to happen, and that's the point, I think, of Scuffletown Dog's question is, that number 2 is important because you're one play away, especially with a guy like Stetson Bennett if he turns out being the number 1 again, because he likes to run and he's not the biggest of stature. And then, you take hits in the SEC, and that happens with lots of people. But
that's why I think the coaching staff's put a big focus on that this spring. They, like I said, they know what they got with Stetson. Let's let the other twos run with the ones a good bit and see what we have, and get somebody ready, because they need somebody ready, because they know one of those guys are going to have to, come in if and when Stetson does get banged up.
Jed, the third part of that question was, overall, could this be Kirby's best class in 2023? You've kind of been there seeing this class kind of develop and the guys that could be there. I think it could be a really good class, and a class that is definitely top 3, but Kirby's had several number 1 classes overall in his tenure year. I don't know if that has a realistic chance to be the best one overall. I guess it depends on what happens with guys like Arch Manning, Justice Haynes, and Richard Young.
Yeah, it's so early to make those kind of guesses, but any discussion of this being Kirby's best class would end right if Georgia misses on Arch Manning. I feel like, but I mean, overall maybe, but you look at the defensive class they signed last year, and it's just from a defensive standpoint, it's hard to imagine any defensive, especially in that defensive secondary, imagine what they did in 2022. But and nothing's impossible, I should say. I feel like they would also have to land one of these top flight receivers like a Hakeem Williams, a Brandon Ennis somehow, for that discussion to take place too. But you never know. I mean, like I said, it's still only April 4th, not even April 5th. So there's still a long way to go, but it's definitely possible, and we'll just have to see how everything shakes out.
Yeah, and Brian Span on YouTube, I see your question. We're going to get to it here in just a second, but my point I wanted to make on it is that 2018 class alone. I mean, when you go off and read those names, Zamir White, Justin Fields, Adam Anderson, James Cook, Brenton Cox, Cade Mays, Jamari Sawyer, Tyson Campbell, Chris Smith, Warren Erickson, John Fitzpatrick, Azeez Ojulari, Karis Jackson, Jordan Davis, Trey Hill, Nadab Joseph, Devad Wilson, Devontae White, Channing Tindall, Luke Ford, Quay Walker, Otis Reese, Tommy Bush, Jake Camarda, Owen Connon, and Tremel Wathor. Several guys still playing there, man, but that's an unbelievable class.
You're just reading off them names. I'm saying in my head, Ole Miss. All these kids.
Yeah.
I mean, half of those kids are transferred. Devad Wilson.
Oh yeah. I mean, not all of them ended up, but just when you talk about it just as a class, that's an unbelievable class.
I can see that happening with this Texas A&M class. With they have a lot of guys transfer out eventually, and I can see that same thing happen with this Texas A&M class when they don't have the playing time they're wanting.
Nature of the beast, for sure. Here from the YouTube, Brian Span, which other SEC East team is making the most waves in recruiting? Is there one UGA rival who is showing an ability to challenge the Dogs? I'll say this early on, and thank you, Brian, for the question. Early on, I think the reviews on Brian Napier are really are on not Brian Napier on Napier in Florida. Man, I don't know what I'm doing with the first names. I've lost it. What is Napier's first name? I don't know. Napier. Billy Ball. I said Brian. I said Brian because Brian asked us the question. Billy Napier in Florida. I think the reviews are really good. That Florida collective that they have going on is strong in the NIL game. Heupel, of course, the Tennessee collective must be doing some good stuff over there with that $8 million deal to Nico Iamaleava. And then just today, Mark Stoops hired Texas A&M's director of on-campus recruiting away from them. So I think everybody in the SEC East of those 3 teams that actually have a shot, I don't even know if we count Missouri and Vandy as SEC teams anymore. Like, have they been kicked out yet? But I mean, when you're talking about SEC, and then Beamer's trying to do what he can, but he's utilizing the transfer portal a lot more than those other guys. I think Tennessee, Kentucky, and Florida are all kind of competing for that backup mantle, there to Georgia as who can challenge them, Trent.
I think Florida's definitely, it kind of reminds me of a lot of other teams. Tennessee, when they just hired Jeremy Pruitt, just you're the new kid on the block. That I guess you're the pretty kid and you're the new kid, and you look good now. But what's going to happen when the season comes? Are you going to be able to show on field what you're preaching on the recruiting trail? I think a lot can shift between now and the fall, similar to the way it did at Tennessee that year, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of team they can put on the field this fall. But they're definitely a team that is making waves right now in the recruiting trail. They lead for a lot of guys, but a lot of guys are not going to
so you're saying if Florida loses to Utah and Kentucky to open up the season, it's going to hurt their recruiting? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying when they go 5-7, it's going to hurt.
Yeah, when they open up 1-3 to losing to Utah, Kentucky at home, beating USF, and then losing to Tennessee and Knoxville, because I think that's totally realistic for Florida to start the season.
Yeah, I looked at their schedule the other day. They could legit start off like 2-4 or something like that.
Jed, the last question part of the question from Scuffletown was Deuce Robinson. I haven't heard a whole lot out of the visit from Deuce Robinson, but I would just say this: I think that if you're going to add a third tight end in this class, it's totally contingent upon there being movement in the portal away from Georgia, and that's just hard to gauge right now because Darnell Washington is the one guy that people talk about in that manner, and he's hurt right now, so who even knows what could go on.
Yeah, it seems like the Deuce Robinson thing is one of, like you said, it doesn't seem like Georgia's, because they've already got Pierce Spurlin and Lawson Lucky committed in the 23 class. So if a Darnell Washington was to leave, then I think you see the heat turned up a lot more on Deuce Robinson, just because all of a sudden it becomes that much more likely that they take a third tight end. So I think right now having Mike Nicholas is just maintaining those relationships. But yeah, it could be one of those things they really turn up the heat if Darnell Washington or somebody else were to leave.
And that Classic City Collective and NIL money from Georgia is going to have to be pretty strong. They're trying to compete with that baseball money. Baseball teams got deep pockets.
Ain't no doubt about it. Yeah, you're gonna have to beat some signing bonuses for sure. But
Justice Haynes maybe as well. Like I was talking to people close to the Justice Haynes situation. This summer is huge for him. Like he's a left-handed pitcher and a really good, speedy guy that on the base pass has a little pop in his bat, and he's throwing upwards of 90. He's touching 92, 93 sometimes from the left-hand side with a good curveball. I mean, that's hard to compete with. If he has a big summer on his travel team, he could legitimately end up playing professional baseball and not football at all.
Yeah, and that's what I talked about Dylan Lonergan. He's a heck of a baseball player too, but he didn't play much summer baseball last year, and I'm not sure what his plans are this summer. So we'll see where the focus is, because he's another guy that if he could have a big summer in baseball, he might not ever see football if he wanted to go that route.
Absolutely. Now, one thing that is interesting in speaking to Dylan Lonergan's dad a few months ago, he said that the NIL situation actually makes being a dual sport athlete in college more attractive to him, just because that gives you double the marketability there in college and puts you in a unique spot over some other guys possibly to do some things. So that's one thing to keep an eye on as well. Jed, PA Dog 610, one of our loyal questioners from the vault has a question for us.
Absolutely. PA Dog. Does Georgia have a legitimate shot at Vic Burley? I know he has close ties with Clemson. What position do you see him at with UGA if he chooses to be in Athens?
So Vic Burley's in that 285 to 290, range, but he's long, carries that weight well, has good leverage, so he could end up being anything, I think, Trent, from a 3 technique to a 5 technique, depending on how he develops at the next level. I don't think you're going to see him eat his way into being a nose guard or a 0, but I think anywhere from that outside shade of the guard to maybe an end on some heavier personnel sets could be the case for him.
Yeah, he's a little bit heavier, kind of is in the mold of Trayvon Walker. Can play the 5, maybe slide inside on on passing downs, but
maybe in a Malik Herring type role.
Yeah. Malik played a lot of five, slid into the three every once in a while. But yeah, I think he's that type guy. You're not going to see him at standing up outside linebacker. You're not going to see him at nose, but he's definitely one of those five or 3 or 5 technique type guys that. I mean, and he's good. I mean, I'm sure Clemson's after him hard. I'm sure they're recruiting him as the 4-3 defensive end.
Yeah. Now, being a Warner Robins guy, you know that Georgia, with the ties they have in South Georgia, are going to really, really do the best job they possibly can of trying to keep him in state. But obviously, he does have those Clemson ties, and it will be, I think, kind of a toss up between those. But I wouldn't count out, other schools, Alabama and other schools. I mean, that's one that I think is going to take well into the latter parts of his recruitment to be resolved.
This is another one that I think the draft's going. Georgia can use the draft really well here because you got Trayvon Walker going, which would probably be his position in college, and you also have 2 other guys going that play that, not necessarily Jordan Davis, but Devontae, you got him going, and he plays the 3 a good bit. So this draft's big in a lot of ways, and recruiting is definitely one of them.
Yeah, I think the last some of the mock drafts I saw today had 5 Georgia Bulldogs going in the first round. So definitely going to be something interesting to keep your eye on. Got a YouTube question here from Martin Arenado. Sorry if I mispronounced that there. 1 impact rookie / freshman on each side of the ball for 2022. Trent, when I think about a freshman, I guess rookie means somebody who didn't play last year, so didn't play meaningful snaps last year. I think when you talk about a guy who showed some flashes last year, but this is going to be his first year really in the fire, I think Jamon Dumas Johnson on defense is a guy that you got to look at, that he's going to be the next great Georgia linebacker, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think not only him, as I think Munden will be there right there as well. I think Munden's going to be really good. I think that's going to be an excellent tandem for the next couple of years.
And Xavier Sorry too. I mean, the trio of those guys are really good.
And Xavier's a guy that you can move from the inside to the out, and you can play him at both. But also look at those defensive backs that Georgia just signed. I think you could have 2 of them starting this coming class. Maybe I think William Poole and those guys coming back kind of put it where Georgia is not going to have to force some guys in, but I think there's going to be a couple guys that earn it before it's all said and done. You might see Malachi Starks at safety. You might see, Singletary at corner. I mean, there's just a bunch of guys.
And the second year guys that didn't play, like Kamari Lassiter, could be huge too. But Jed, who's I know you got some contenders like Branson Robinson, Oscar Delp on the offensive side. Jackson Meeks is a second year guy who's making some plays apparently in the scrimmages. Who maybe stands out the most to you as an offensive guy who could be most impactful in their first meaningful action there at Georgia?
Yeah, looking at 2 guys. I mean, Jackson Meeks is one. He looks really good in the practices we've seen. He made some nice plays in the scrimmage we were hearing the other day. Another one of those big, with the departure of George Pickens, he's a big physical guy on the outside that could, win jump balls and be a red zone threat, that type of thing. And then Branson Robinson, we've all seen the pictures of that guy. I mean, he's a freak athlete coming in. And you look back to 2017 when Georgia had Nick Chubb and Sony Michel. And every now and then they put DeAndre Swift in, and he'd get like 3 to 5 carries a game, and he'd make the most out of those carries. So I think Branson Robinson could be a guy that fights for that kind of role and only gets a few carries every game just to spell those other guys, but he makes the most of those carries, and then setting up into the 2023 season where he really starts to take over more of the load.
I think the biggest impact guy on offense, and it's a guy who hasn't played due to an injury, is Tate Ratledge. I mean,
that's true.
He was going to start last year as a redshirt freshman, and he got hurt first game, didn't see him the rest of the season, and I think that he's going to come in and immediately fill a void at guard. And
Devin Willock too. Devin Willock could be huge. I mean, big guy massive guy.
and I think it's kind of He's not going to. Michael is not going to get as much thought about just due to Nolan and Robert Bill coming back. But I can see Michael in a
Marvin
role.
Jones.
Michael and Marvin in a role just like Adam Anderson was his freshman year, just rushing the passer. I mean,
just mercenary. Just go in and kill the quarterback.
You're coming in on third down with fresh leg, just kill somebody. And and I can see those guys building up the sack numbers.
Yeah, I think Marvin Jones and Michael are tremendous. Like Jed said it earlier. This defensive class that they brought in the class of 2022, it's going to be hard to beat no matter what they pull in the class of 2023, in my opinion. And Stack's right up there, even though they finished third overall. You're talking about a Texas A&M class that was unprecedented. I mean, oil money on top of oil money being dropped over there. So we'll see what ends up happening. Like Trent said, it's going to be interesting to see how many of those guys finish their career in College Station. What's Up Dog says the arch would be great on Broad Street. Is that wishful thinking? So our weekly Arch Manning question, a lot of people saying, Arch Manning's gone. He's going to Alabama, all that kind of stuff. But then some of those same people were saying the same thing after he visited Texas. So I think you have to really, really take all of the post-visit drama with a grain of salt and really look at who's been maybe the most consistent in the recruitment. I think Georgia's right up there with anybody in terms of how the recruitment of Arch Manning has played out.
Like I said, any post visit with the Manning family, they're going to give. They're not going to come away and be like, the visit was okay. It was whatever. I mean, they're gonna give it. I mean, every visit from now on for Arch should be top of the line, or that family's not going to be back. So I think a lot of people run with. And they went on this visit. Oh, well, they're the leader. That's not the type of family this Manning family is. That's a lot of fans talking, a lot of people talking. I still like
big difference between Arch Manning and Walter Nolan.
Yeah, I mean Walter Nolan. I mean, there were 72 different schools that led for him, and just, But anyways, but I think with Arch, I still like where Georgia stands. I like the relationships there. I like we've talked about the college experience. We've talked about he likes the scheme. He likes Monken. He likes who he's going to be working with Buster Faulkner. Just a lot of things in Georgia's favor, and it's been there since day one. All of that's been there since day one, and that's the reason why Georgia's kind of stood pat right there at the top group. And I think right now I'd like where Georgia stands.
Yeah, Derek Holmes on YouTube asked us, he said, what about Jalen Walker in terms of the impact guys for the rookies? Yeah, that the reason I think Jalen gets overlooked is because redshirt freshmen, I guess, or they're not redshirt, they're sophomores. They're sophomores, but those sophomore group, Munden, Dumas Johnson, and Sari are just going to take up so much of that space there early on. And Jalen, I will say this, there's nobody that's more mature and more ready for the college life to be thrown at him than Jalen Walker. His dad's a college football coach. He's grown up around it his entire life. It's just, making that jump from high school to college and the SEC level in terms of playing the game. And I think everybody has to make that adjustment, and those three linebackers ahead of him have already, had the opportunity to do so. So I think that'd be the only thing hindering him. What's our next question here? Jed, we got one from Big Dog.
It says, do you anticipate class of 23 running back Richard Young to be on the commit list at UGA or elsewhere? I would certainly think he'd commit somewhere at some point. And then it says, what top receiver is Georgia currently recruiting that we feel good about joining in the class of 23?
All right, let's start with the receiver question first. I think that two guys that Georgia really should feel the best about currently in terms of wide receiver are probably Hakeem Williams and Bryson Rogers. I think Bryson Rogers, I think it's down to 2 or 3 for him. Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia. He's planning on committing in the next couple of months. So right there, it's okay, how does the official go? Because he'll be back for an official. So what's Georgia? You gotta like Georgia when it comes to on-campus recruiting as much as anybody. That's a guy out of the Tampa area that's long, that's rangy. Has the ability to separate. And I think Fran Brown, actually, who's on the other side of the ball, did some really good stuff in there with a late night visit with him when he came up. So I think Bryson Rogers is a guy that you got to look at wide receiver. But the first part of that question there with Richard Young, I mean, Jed, we were talking about it before we came on air. I think the running back position has kind of been in flux for Georgia in this class, with the one consistent being Just Haynes.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of the a flavor of the month kind of thing, because it was Reuben Owens for a while, and then Georgia was back in there with Trayon Webb for a while, and now it seems like it's Richard Young. He visited, I believe it was last weekend. He brought his family, brought his girlfriend, and he's a little bit more that big. I think we actually were talking about this last week playing. He's got like that Derrick Henry physique. He's tall. He's obviously well built. So I think Georgia would take both. I mean, we were talking about this earlier. Why would you not take Justice Haynes and Richard Young, right? That's two of the best running backs in the nation. But, Richard Young, there's Alabama. We were talking about this. It seemed like it's been Alabama and Ohio State ahead of Georgia a lot of this time. And now all of a sudden.
And USC, too, trying to get in.
Yeah. So it's all a matter of, is this just a post-visit high that we're kind of sensing with Richard Young right now? Or did Georgia really sort of have a breakthrough here, and will they be able to get him back on campus and continue all this momentum in his recruitment?
Trent?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of it is after Kenny McIntosh and after Kendall Milton, you don't really have anybody that's really.
Yep.
I mean, you can kind of preach that early playing time coming up in that class, because you think Kendall Milton, if he has a good year, he probably hits the NFL. Then you got Kenny McIntosh, who's was excellent last year. You can probably be in that more of a James Cook role this year. Yeah, I think you're selling coming in and sharing those carries right off the bat. And for running backs, talking about Georgia, yeah, they're more 50-50 in the offense, but they're still running back you. They're still putting running backs in the NFL consistently year after year. And that kind of and Dale McGee is one of the top recruiters in the country. So I think with that being the case, that's what's kind of pushed Georgia with Richard Young right now. And I'm not going to say I'm going to see him on the commit list right now, because it's April and it's a long time till then. But I do like where Georgia has made a move here, and that they're amongst the big boys to land him.
Yeah, and the thing about Georgia that's so attractive to a lot of these running backs is that Dale McGee uses these running backs in the similar fashion to how the NFL uses them now. I mean, even Nick Chubb, who Jed, you're a Cleveland Browns guy. He's probably it's hard life, isn't it, man? But he's maybe the best running back. Him, Derrick Henry, when Henry's healthy in the NFL, and he still shares the load, with two or three backs there. I mean, that's just how it goes in the NFL. So Georgia's going to keep those guys fresh, a lot of tread on the tires for the next level. I mean, it's going to be really, you talked about the draft earlier, Trent. It's going to be really impressive if Zamir White, with his 4.4 flat 40, ends up pushing himself to a late second, early third round pick, which some people are saying, and that's after 2 ACLs. So, that could be one of the stories of the draft, and even more impressive for some guys to look at than Georgia landed, 5 first-round picks. It just depends on what people are looking for, but that's definitely something to keep in mind there.
I also think James Cook fits the NFL perfectly, and a lot of people talked about over his career of his underusage as a ball carrier, but he kind of fits perfectly, and him being that kind of rotational role player, and if Georgia can push him up in the top 3 rounds, that would be just coming from a guy who's just can do it all at running back. I think he kind of fits that mold of the NFL running back style these days.
Gotta love a good hypothetical, and we have one here from Martin Aradano. Another question for us, Trent. You were around for Brian Brzez's recruitment. So who's better in 2022? Has a better 22, Jalen Carter or Brian Brzee?
I mean, stats wise, I mean, I don't know. I would say Brzee probably has the better stats because of the style of play that he is. But I think Jalen Carter will be on the better team, and I think he'll have a. I mean, I think Jalen Carter. Both of them are going to go high in the draft. I mean, I think both of them are first round picks, but I would say probably Brzee has the better stats because of the way they're just used, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a lot of people you see post regularly from whether it's PFF or whether it's the Pro Football Network or whoever's doing draft coverage. They say, Georgia's going to have a unprecedented number of guys drafted and their best player didn't even come out this year. And they're talking about Jalen Carter. So Jalen Carter is a guy that a lot of people see as being a potential number 1 overall pick. I mean, that's how good he is. And Georgia could end up potentially having back-to-back because there's still buzz out there that Trayvon Walker could go number 1. And how crazy would that be? You talk about a recruiting pitch. You can say this guy didn't even start for us most of the time, and he's the number 1 overall pick in the draft. I mean, before the Adam Anderson situation and everything, Trayvon was, kind of mixing in there. He got to play a lot more later on, but is a guy that covered kickoffs mostly for the first 2 years and then was really productive this past year for Georgia in the run to the national championship and now could go number 1 overall. I mean, Trent, that's a pretty strong pitch to go into somebody's living room with.
Yeah, I mean, and talking about tread on the tires, I mean, they do that with the defense line too. They try to rotate the guys, and I know Trayvon took on a bigger role after Adam left, just from a pure pass rushing situation. Him and Tyndall and those guys, but I mean, that's he was always an athletic dude. I mean, he was always and at times you might have thought he was a little undersized, being a 3-4 defense. But then, he kind of fit the 4. I think he's going to be a 4-3 just wreck as a defensive end at the NFL. And yeah, he's if he goes number 1, you're definitely going to hear some loud noises out of Athens that night from the recruiting trail.
Oh yeah, it'll be like if Georgia doesn't have a camera on Kirby Smart. I don't know. Maybe Kirby Smart would be in Las Vegas, but if they don't have a camera on him for social media purposes, like Sam Pittman did on himself when he knew he was going to Arkansas, that's a total miscalculation there by the social media team. But Georgia's social media team typically pretty savvy, so I'm sure there'll be something lined up there. Guys, we'll take a couple more questions on YouTube if you got any, so submit those. But while we're waiting on those to come in, Jed, go ahead and tell these guys. I know you're working on a little something with 2023 offensive tackles. What can they expect coming up on the vault here soon?
So who's going to be on the commit list? Who's signing with Georgia?
Oh God, that's for next week. Yeah, we got by request on the board. I'm sorry, I forget who requested it, but someone asked who like a 23 offensive tackle hot board, so that'll be running tomorrow morning. There's some guys visiting Athens tomorrow. I believe Richardson, 4-star, will be in Athens tomorrow, so have stories on that. DJ Lagway, 4-star, 24 quarterback.
Isn't KJ Bolden visiting tomorrow as well, or Thursday? Thursday.
It'll be your Thursday.
That's a name, guys, that in the class of 2024 and 2025, there's 3 or 4 Buford guys that are really like, most of the time with Buford and Grayson, it's traditionally been, okay, Georgia, kind of does a little dance with those guys and says, exchanges pleasantries. They may come on a visit, but Georgia's heavily involved in the recruitments of King Joseph Edwards, of KJ Bolden, of Edric Houston. Those are all 3 guys in that class of 2024 that legitimately could end up at the University of Georgia. And I would even call Georgia the leader for at least 2 out of those 3 right now.
Their 24 guys are way better than their 22 guys this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, when we watch those games at Buford this fall, I mean, how many times did we go there looking to either watch somebody Buford was playing or there was Isaiah Bond back when there was smoke with Georgia. with him and KJ Bolden looks like the best player on the field by far on a team that, won the state championship, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, you got, like you mentioned, there was Jake Pope there was Isaiah Bond there, but when you go to watch Buford, you saw two guys come out on the field, and it was KJ Bolden and it was Edric Houston. Those guys showed up, and now they've added King Joseph Edwards to that squad, so that'll be something interesting to watch as well. So definitely a lot to keep up with. That's why you need to subscribe to this YouTube channel so you catch us every Monday night live. And also you got Roddy with Dan Young and the star of that show, Jim Donnan, tomorrow will be on there. I don't know if they're going tomorrow at 12 or tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. So make sure to hit your notifications button as well when you do the subscribe, because that'll notify you every time that we go live. We have this show, the full replay on the podcast version. So just UGASports, search that on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your audio version. If you want to listen while you're at work or cutting the grass or whatever you want to do to catch up on some Georgia football recruiting, we'd appreciate that as well. So hit that like button for us if you're in here. And if no other questions on YouTube, which I don't see any more for right now, so we're going to go ahead and sign off for Jed May and for Trent Smallwood. I am Blaine Gilmer, and we will catch you next time on Georgia Recruiting Rumors versus Facts.